Nina, why are you just my cousin and not my mommy?
Claudia peered up at me with curious eyes. I knew where this had come from, as the topic of the week at kindergarten was family. Claudia's innocent words made me squirm with guilt. Was I a bad person? I'd been asking myself this daily for the last 4 years. Yep, the little girl next to me wasn't my daughter. I stole her from her real dad and have been raising her single-handedly ever since. It all started with my Uncle Oliver, who is a successful businessman and a super loving person. I owe a lot to him and to my grandma, as they're the ones who raised me after my parents died in a car crash when I was just a little girl. My uncle had been doing a great job filling up the missing father figure in my life. But he also wanted a biological child of his own, which was quite a tricky problem to an asexual man like him. One evening, I just got in from hanging out with my friends when I saw him sitting at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. I asked, "Uncle, what's up?" He looked at me with swollen red eyes, sighed, then said, "Nina, it's silly, really. It's just my birthday is next month, and I don't have the one thing I want the most in the world." I pulled him into a hug and comforted him. I knew he's still longing for a kid, and I wanted to help him. So, together, we looked into the surrogacy process. My uncle was so excited, and he did all the paperwork to buy a donor egg. Now all he needed was a surrogate mother. So he went through his local surrogacy agency, and they presented him with 5 potential surrogate profiles. I swear he must have reread each of them about 100 times. But he eventually chose one, a woman called Kathy. On paper, Kathy sounded perfect. She was a 31-year-old who already had a healthy little boy called Robbie. A contract was drawn up. All Kathy's medical care would be paid for, and she'd also receive a pretty large sum of money. Then, when the baby was 1 week old, my uncle would raise them alone. This all sounds perfect, huh? Well, it soon took a turn for the worst. Once Kathy fell pregnant, Uncle Oliver wanted to be around her more so he could bond with the baby. One time I walked into the lounge to classical music playing, and my uncle pressing his head to Kathy's belly to see if the baby could hear the music. Soon coming home to find Kathy there became the norm for me. At first I didn't mind, as she was always really sweet to me, and we even had small talks from time to time. But then, one morning when I was heading downstairs to go to work, I spotted her standing in the yard helping my grandma water the flowers. I was about to walk over to greet them, then I heard her say, "Oliver is such a lovely man, but he's so busy. I worry he'll find it all a bit too much juggling a newborn and work." Then Grandma said, "Don't worry, sweetie, as he'll have Nina and me around to help." But Nina is so young, and she has her own life to lead. She's always out at a party or with some boy, and you can't be expected to take care for a baby, not at your age. I just don't want a stranger caring for my baby, not when I could help out. What? Her sweet-as-sugar behavior was all an act, wasn't it? How dare she try and manipulate my lovely grandma? A few days later, I went down to dinner to see Kathy sitting there. She smiled at me and asked me about my day. I wasn't buying her overly nice act, but I went along with it anyway. At one point, she suddenly took her phone out, then her smile turned into a frown. "Oh, no. Robbie has a fever. I better go to him." She immediately pulled back her chair and stood up. You know how it is. Only a mother's love can make a little one feel better. Then she left. Kathy's poisonous words had definitely got to Grandma, as she showed concern for Robbie and let out a gentle smile as her eyes followed Kathy's steps. And that was only the beginning. Kathy's game playing continued as a few days later, she showed up on our doorstep in tears. Then she came out with some story about how the venue for Robbie's birthday party had canceled and they refused to refund her. Like clockwork, my uncle told her she could have the party at ours and that he'd cover the costs. On the day of the party, I saw Kathy pass my uncle all of the receipts for the bouncy castle, magician, catering, etc. She gently pat her tummy and grinned. "You'll be such a wonderful father. You know, we could always have another one after this. For free, of course." Then, later on, I saw her whispering something to Robbie. Then the next minute, he ran over to my uncle. He hugged his legs and said,
Thank you for the party, Daddy.
Then Kathy hurried over to him, ruffled his hair, and said, Oh, honey, he's not your daddy, but it'd be nice, wouldn't it, to all live here together with the baby? Enough was enough, so that night I confronted my uncle and grandma about it. I don't have a good feeling about Kathy. I think she's trying to break the contract. My uncle sighed, then said, I know. Then grandma added, Kathy's right, though. Oliver can't do this alone. You're too young and I'm too old. So it makes sense for Kathy to stick around and help. Still better than having some random stranger around, right? I can help out, I raised my voice. Rather me than her. I don't trust her. Grandma shook her head. But she's the mother. She's carrying the baby. Their bond is undeniable. I know what it's like to lose people I love. Kathy will break this baby's heart. I'm sure of it. She's only out for herself. My face turned red as I raised my voice. My uncle remained silent. Then he just sighed and walked out of the room. I ran after him and pulled him back. Uncle, you made your choice right from the beginning. Why change it now? He replied with his eyes glued to the ground. Your grandma has a point. What? My voice was up to high pitch. Stop letting that witch Kathy manipulate you. He shook his head, then walked away. Oh my God. They were being controlled like puppets. This needed to stop. So I decided to confront Kathy about it. My chance arrived the next day. She was helping to cook dinner, so I said to her, I know what you're up to. You just want an easy life without any money worries. That's why you're manipulating them. But you can't fool me. She stopped chopping the carrots, then looked at me. Is that so? The thing is, Nina, I always get what I want. She gave me an evil smirk. Then she slammed the knife into the carrot with such ferocity that I flinched. It was official. Kathy was crazy, but I didn't have any proof. So basically, there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. As expected, the craziness continued into the next day. I went to Grandma's room and saw her looking flustered as she searched through her bedside drawer. I, again, couldn't find my pills, and that they kept on showing up in strange places. She seemed really worried that she was losing her mind. Later on, when we were all eating dinner, Kathy went to the fridge, and surprise, surprise, guess what she found there? Yep, Grandma's pills. Obviously, Kathy had put them there. Then she walked over to Grandma, rubbed her shoulder, concernedly said, I should have taken care of you more. We should have you checked by the doctor as soon as possible. Age can be so cruel on the mind, and you don't want to be forgettable around the baby. After that, Grandma seemed totally convinced that she was too old to take care for a baby, even after the doctor told her she was fine. Furthermore, she was adamant that Kathy should move in to help out. Ugh! What a snake Kathy was! A month later, the baby was born. A girl. My uncle named her Claudia, after my mom. We all cried happy tears and welcomed her into our family. Kathy got her wish, and both her and Robbie moved into our house. One morning I came downstairs to see Kathy holding the baby. In front of her was the ripped-up contract. I told her to leave, and she smirked and said, You're a smart girl, Nina, but you're no match for me. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home now, so get used to it. I knew there was no point telling my uncle and grandma about this. I couldn't let this woman destroy my family. She was dangerous. She could end up hurting everyone. She'd never stop until she got what she wanted, and there's no way I could let that happen. So, when Kathy was in the bathroom, I picked Claudia up, and before I could stop myself, I was fleeing from the house and out of their lives. I moved to a new town and got a new job. It was only meant to be temporary, but I guess I was too selfish and afraid to go back. I'd always been truthful with Claudia about one thing, that I was her cousin, not her mom. So, when Claudia said the words,
Nina, why are you just my cousin and not my mommy?
I felt so guilty. She was missing out on a relationship with her father because of me. Yes, I'd wanted my family to get out of Kathy's trap, But what I did wasn't fair to my uncle. I knew that now. I had no right taking his daughter away from him for 4 years. I felt so awful. Thinking about the distress I must have caused him and Grandma, the guilt was eating me up, and I knew I couldn't carry on like this anymore. So I called up an old family friend and asked him to approach my uncle. Later that day, my friend got back to me with a message from him. "Kathy's gone, and she won't be coming back. You were right about her. Of course. She was only after my money. After you left, she didn't seem to care about Claudia at all, and she threatened to go to the cops and report you unless I paid her off. Please, just come back to me and Grandma. We sure aren't happy with what you did, but we know you had good intentions. We love you, and we just want our girls back home." Tears streamed down my face. They'd found it in their hearts to forgive me. Running away had never been the answer, even if I'd done it with good intentions. It was time to stop running. It was time to go home. So I peered down at the little girl who reminded me so much of my uncle. "Claudia?" I took her hand. "Are you ready to go home to Daddy?"